Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and since 2016, Monica Shimonik has been coaching moms and dads as they navigate through the treacherous waters of the family law racket. Aside from workshops, which helps with specific problems, her 12-week signature course, The Best Interest of the Parent, uses a 4-quadrant model to create a robust healing and empowerment system so that you control the narrative in your life, not the state. Use coupon code SLAM the Gavel to get 10% off her course, and that will be in the podcast notes. I have a great guest on. Her name is Barbara Stone. She's a former real estate attorney, previously in practice in New York and Florida in prominent national firms, and a former real estate broker. Barbara has unique firsthand experience of the human rights atrocities by the cross-corrupted U.S. government branches, having been forced into courts across the country, including the U.S. Supreme Court, seeking the futile remedy to protect her mother from being trafficked in the guise of guardianship, and finding only vicious whistleblower retaliation. In the process, Barbara has found the entire U.S. legal system to be a lawless entity used as an entity devised by the government to strip the public of her rights, liberty, and property. Nowhere are the horrors of American pseudo courts more terrifying than those operating in the ruse of guardianship. No one in the world with financial assets is immune. This is made apparent by the Britney Spears case and that of many other high-profile celebrities and prominent members of the public. Barbara has been viciously retaliated for being a whistleblower to the criminal enterprise perpetrated under the ruse of guardianship, conservatorship, to which Barbara and her mother have been subjected. Barbara was stripped of her law license after she already retired from the practice of law, repeatedly falsely arrested for reporting crimes and her efforts to save her mother's life. Her assets and her home were seized in a retaliatory fraudulent lawsuits for exposing these atrocities and to attempt to silence her. And I welcome Barbara Stone on here to my Slam the Gavel podcast, because what happened to her can happen to anyone. I welcome you, Barbara Stone.
Thank you, Marianne. It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to do a little exposure to the public and to make them aware of what goes on, not only in the courts, but in the government as a whole.
I just wonder, I just recently heard about guardianships within probably this last past year. I didn't even know any of this was going on. And, all of a sudden I'm hearing more about it. How did you stumble upon it other than, this incident with your mother?
That's the problem. People realize, I believe today, that something smells, something doesn't feel right in the government, and especially people that are in the court. But the way it works is that when you're in the family court or when you're in the guardian court, you just kind of believe in the very beginning that it's your case, this can't really be happening. And so everybody stumbles and struggles, along those lines, not realizing that what goes on in these courts is a deliberate suppression or stripping of rights of the public, of children in family court and older adults or vulnerable people in the guardian court. And so laws are enacted that are illegal. And then these illegal laws are used by judges to strip rights and strip property. So people that are in these courts are expressing their anger against the judges, which of course is the case, but they don't realize it's a real big picture that these judges are adjudicating illegal laws that strip our rights when the government is there to protect our rights. And so it becomes very simple once you kind of understand that. And I guess as far as my case, it's something that I've repeated over and over. It's out there on the internet. I like to go beyond individual cases at this point, but I'll basically summarize what happened to me so that people can understand how you get there. So, Marianne, unless you have something you want to jump in with at
Oh,
this
yeah.
point, I'll just, start with.
No, I was going to say, please warn us because a lot of people don't know how this evolves. And then, they hear about someone in a situation, but they need to know how you got into that situation.
Okay. Well, my case started when I filed for guardianship for my mother because she was being exploited and abused by a sibling. And these are all proven crimes because I had forged checks that he wrote. I had statements from bank accounts where, hundreds of thousands of dollars were missing. And there were documented medical reports that show that she was repeatedly admitted to the hospital by emergency for suspicious falls and fractures. So having all of this evidence, I figured I'm just going to go to the police and show them. And of course, all of this is going to be taken care of because it's all proven.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens in today's society is that all of the government officials are all working together because there's money to be made by forcing families into court. And it's so horrific that families, the very essence of our government, are being terrorized in these situations. So in my case, I started with the police. I showed them the forged checks. I showed them the bank accounts. At that point, I didn't have the medical records because they were being withheld from me, but I had been told by an attorney that was purportedly representing my mother that she had been repeatedly put into the hospital. And of course, he did nothing because he's part of the guardian cabal. So I went to the police. They told me it's a civil matter. And it's so offensive for anyone to be insulted in that way because this is not a civil matter, Mr. Police Officer.
Mm-hmm.
I am showing you financial records of crimes that you, Mr. Police Officer, particularly the sheriff, because the sheriffs have the most power of anyone in our country, are supposed to file an indictment and arrest the person who's falsifying checks and stealing money. But that doesn't happen because everybody's part of it. And I'll get to the money part and how the money gets distributed to the courts and guardianship and in family courts in just a minute. But just to kind of continue with what happened to me. So I went to the state attorney, bypassing the police. And as a matter of fact, a whole group of us, there were 10 of us that were dealing with the same crimes, not civil matters, the same crimes in various stages regarding their parents or their children. And we all held a meeting with the state attorney's office. And again, we got the response, this is a civil matter, and diversion, digression, lies, misrepresentations. And it's purposely to keep us spinning around in the government spin cycle where there is no remedy. Then we went to the FBI, same thing. Several of us went to the FBI repeatedly, where we were terrorized and threatened by the FBI, who falsely state that these are not federal crimes, which they are because they all involve commerce and trade, throughout the various states. So we got no remedy there. So in my case, the abuse of my mother was ongoing because it's part of their agenda to isolate the person that they're abusing so that they can do this in secret. So at this point, my sibling had removed my mother's telephone, removed a fax that I'd given her, removed a cell phone that I'd given her no way of communicating with the outside world, told she was in a condominium, told the people in charge of the condominium that no one could go see my mother except if they got his permission. And no one had his permission, of course, and there could be no other explanation for her being in the hospital with suspicious falls and fractures because he was the only one that saw her. So that's all part of what goes on. But what people, I guess, need to understand at the very beginning, that the big thing where the big warning is the isolation, Because when there's isolation, that means that that there's intimidation, threats, and all kinds of other coercive things going on that everybody needs to be aware of and put a stop to it immediately. I was very naive at the time, and I felt like I had no other alternative but to file guardianship for my mother, because I figured, again,
Mhm.
naively, that I would be appointed the guardian
Mhm.
and all of this nonsense would stop. But that's not what happens in the guardian courts, because these guardian courts are they're actually criminal enterprises running under the auspices of government, because the objective is to issue illegal void orders to strip their victims of their property and their rights. So as soon as I filed the guardianship for my mother, false accusations were made against me, and there's never any hearings on any of this. It's just hearsays thrown around, and then that's used to be able to issue orders, getting the relief that these predators, or the people that are conducting the hearsay, want, and to drum up fees which are taken from their victim. So that's what happened to me. I was removed from being able to see my mother. A lot of void orders were issued saying that I couldn't report crimes against my mother. I was repeatedly falsely arrested for contempt of court, for violating illegal void orders, and so on and so forth. But so that's the background of my story. And we're now assembling, or we have assembled, a group of 50 or 60 victims all over the country of the guardian courts. And we're all filing together because we all realize that to attack this individually is futile,
Mhm.
because no one can get remedy individually. To the contrary, whatever remedy you seek, you never get. Instead, more of your rights are stripped, and there's only retaliation. And so, what I really want to convey by this interview today is just to alert the public that the laws that are being adjudicated by the judges in guardian court are enacted by the legislators, who know that these laws are all illegal and void. But what happens is that they get money for enacting these illegal void laws, because they're paid through the governor's office by federal funds for conducting courts, and for their salaries, etc. And so there's also a counterpart in the family courts, and I'm not as familiar with the family courts, and I encourage Marianne to have an
Mhm.
attorney on the show who can talk more about what goes on in the family courts under Title 4, which is a law that was specifically enacted by federal legislators to give money to this
Mhm.
criminal cartel known as CPS, to
Mhm.
steal your children and put them in foster homes. And so the foster homes get paid to take your children. It's the most depraved, unbelievable situation, but it's not just something that's isolated to, these lowly petty state courts, but it's running rampant throughout our government, um, by the federal legislators who know all about it, and routinely they convene hearings, and Senate committees on aging and House committees on aging, and they talk about the atrocities going on in guardianship and give lip service to it. And then whenever someone actually appears at a Senate or a congressional hearing, they listen, and then they say your time is up. And
Mhm.
that's the end of it. It never goes any further than that. And therefore, they're an aider and abetter, a conspirator, and a cover up to this
Mhm.
racket. And so here we are today, when the public has allowed all of their rights to be stripped by government officials. And now we need to take our rights back.
Mhm. Oh, I agree. This group that you have formed, how did you do that? And what is it? called if people want to get involved?
Okay. Um, People speak to other people who are involved in this through Facebook and LinkedIn accounts and all kinds of different avenues. They look up, who are the victims of the judges and who are the victims of the attorneys. So there's kind of like an underground slavery pipeline. That's because that's what this is. This is human trafficking. This
Mhm.
is forcing us, the family members, to appear in these courts where these are kangaroo courts, literally kangaroo courts. And there's a definition of kangaroo courts by Black's Law Dictionary, which is something that I just submitted in a court document, where there's a deliberate deprivation of due process and several other deliberate acts. And the judicial officer that's conducting this is actually like the adversary in the proceedings. So he's your opponent, but he's conducting the proceeding. And so it literally is a kangaroo court. But to get back to your question, we have a website called End Guardian Racket, and I'm going to give everybody my email address, which is barbara.stone.usa@gmail.com, because the only way we're really going to resolve any of this is if we, the people, the public, get together and demand our rights back and file petitions and file court documents and file with international agencies, including the United Nations and including NATO, because those are the agencies that are required, that are formed to police the world, to police human rights atrocities, which is what these activities are. These are human rights atrocities. So we're with earth rights, natural rights, inalienable rights that are proclaimed in the Declaration of Independence, which states that nobody can be stripped of their unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so these international agencies are there to protect these rights because they're being taken from us by our government. And so it's futile to seek remedy by the government itself who's involved in this, except by banding together and demanding remedy and exposing this internationally. So I'm not sure if that answers your question exactly, Marianne, and please let me know if I missed something or if it wasn't clear.
No, that was excellent. I know that Zoom is giving us a little hard time here, but the one group was End Guardianship. Is there?
The website is called endguardianracket.com, and it's still it's still being completed, but it's complete enough for people to access it. And there's a portal in the website for people to communicate with me through that portal, or to communicate directly to me by barbara.stone.usa@gmail.com. But again, the thing that I want to get across today is that our rights, these are not civil rights. These are human rights. These are birthrights stripped and seized from us by government officials for their own financial gain. And so governments are instilled to protect these rights. And so it's all working in reverse. And the United States and the public has to wake up.
Yes. And I've had other people on talking about guardianships, like probably since like the spring. And I just want to increase a lot of awareness because, I mean, this is just really sickening.
When we talk to each other, half of the time that we spend talking to each other is just reiterating the disbelief that we have. We just all keep saying the same thing. This is unbelievable. You can't believe it. Where I'm trying to get people to move past that and take action and get our rights back, because these people, these judges and the legislators that are engaged in this criminal activity, need to be criminally prosecuted. And these crimes are proved on their face by what's happening here. They're proven, they're evidenced just by the fact that they're occurring. They're evidenced. And so that's why a lot of these courts seal their records. They conduct ex parte hearings, because this is all a secret underground enterprise. And so we as a group have a responsibility to ourselves and to our children and to the next generation. We have got to take our rights back, and we've got to hold these government officials acting under color of law criminally and civilly accountable. And these laws have to be repealed and abolished. And so wherever we need to go, including up to President Joe Biden or whoever happens to be sitting in that office at the time, they all know these laws are illegal. They all know it and they abet it. And we've got to demand that executive orders be issued repealing and abolishing these laws, whether it comes from the President of the United States, the governor's office, the legislative office, wherever we can get it. And once we build up a huge voice, then it's going to make an impression, because these people still rely on being voted into office and public opinion. And so we are the public, we are their employers, and we have to take our rights back.
Now, I've heard it's very hard to repeal anything, that it would cost so much money to repeal, say, Title 4D, Title 4B, and Title 4E. Is there, it just seems like, can this really happen? Because I'd like to see it happen. We're kind of getting into the political realm of, what happens. Are they fighting this tooth and nail? Of course they're fighting it tooth and nail. So we have to do the same. We have to fight it tooth and nail in the court of public opinion. And again, we, the people, we are the employers of these judicial government officials who are abusing us. And so whatever it takes as a group, speaking together, banding together, taking our rights back, exposing it however it needs to be exposed, working together as we, the people, to take back our rights. So unfortunately, it is become a political arena, and we've got to remove it from the political arena and move it into the arena of public opinion, and restore the government to what it was intended to be. And I encourage everybody, I don't have it handy, otherwise I'd read a few examples, but everybody should go look at the Declaration of Independence, because the Declaration of Independence is what forms the government, the government by removing us from the reign of England. And it lists within the Declaration of Independence, the full version of it, I believe it's about 27 examples of the tyranny and the atrocities that were being perpetrated. And so pretty much all of those apply in what's going on in our government today. And Marianne, you're absolutely right. Once you get into these courts, it's too late. It's almost too late. It's not too late if everybody bands together. But you have to be aware that really there is no protection. And that's why these laws all have to be repealed and abolished, because there's no protection. And I want to just make another statement with regard to Britney Spears, because her situation is the epitome of what's going on in the Guardian court, where she's being attacked and vilified, for the crimes of the people that have seized control over her. But one of the couple of things that's really
horrible and people don't really realize in Britney's case is that she's being forcibly drugged with toxic illegal drugs, and she's being forcibly sterilized. And these two activities violate what's called the Nuremberg Code, which I believe was the outcome of what happened in the German Holocaust, where these atrocities were being perpetrated. So these are true atrocities being perpetrated against her. These are crimes against humanity. And our group has filed statements with regard to the crimes against Britney that are taking place in real time with federal legislators. Probably at least half of the, I believe there's 300 or 400 federal House of Representatives, and I believe there's about 100 senators. And so half of them have all been notified by email, fax, mail, etc. And they're ignoring these crimes against Britney. And that makes them an accessory, an accomplice, and a conspirator, because now they know of these crimes and they're conspiring with these crimes. And so they need to be held accountable. And that, again, it all goes back to we the people, the members of the public, who may or may not be in the courts, but their rights are being deprived in other ways, however it might be. They need to all band together because we need to take our rights back.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. I'm just, again, I say I'm horrified by this human trafficking. And
yes, it is. It's human trafficking. It fits exactly within the definition of human trafficking, because we, the family members, are forced into kangaroo courts where there's no remedy, and our loved ones who are being held and seized and kidnapped. It's beyond human trafficking. It's kidnapping. It falls within a whole string of federal crimes. They've been seized. Their rights have been stolen from them, and they're seized, and their assets are being stolen while they're being forcibly held under the control of the government. That's the exact definition of human trafficking.
Well, let me ask you this. If there's an elderly person, well, say for instance, like your mother, what if she had a will in place? Do they just override the will?
Yeah, my mother did have a trust in place, but once, they're seized in this cartel, there's no law. Everything goes out the window. So I call it rape of rights and rape of property, because that's what happens. They walk in there, ex parte hearings with what I call a theft petition, and then the judge signs it. And of course, he's being bribed. There's no question that that's what's going on. And then they go to the bank where they steal the assets of the person that they're abusing. But there's something else that surfaced recently I was aware of, but not aware of the illegality of it. A lot of the assets that are in guardianship, and I think to a certain extent, the children that are in these family courts are what's called federally protected assets, issued Social Security, disability payments, Medicare, veterans pensions, and these are all protected assets. I recall the federal statute. I can provide it to you later, Mary, and I believe there are 2 federal statutes that say that these assets cannot be garnished. And so what are completely ignored by these petty, lowly state court judges who just run in and steal Social Security, pension funds, veterans benefits, disability payments, theft, just outright theft of these protected federal funds. That's how this is just evolved into nothing but a free-for-all. A free-for-all looting of assets. And then once all of the assets are stolen, once they've been stripped of their rights, they've been subjected to physical and emotional atrocities, Then they use these toxic drugs, psychotropic drugs,
Mhm.
which they're being given all along, and they're given toxic dosages of these psychotropic drugs, and they're murdered. Now there's a federal statute called murder for hire. That's what
Mhm.
this is. This is a murder for hire enterprise. And I should know that statute by heart. I believe it's 18 USC 2258. But you can Google it. Federal code, murder for hire, under the US code. That's what's going on.
Yeah, you know, when they start, drugging these people, um, it's obviously, well, in a nursing home if it's an elderly person, but how are these nurses going along with this?
It's so deep, Marianne. Um, there's so many accomplices to all of this. The doctors are giving this medication. For instance, in my mother's case, they tried to hide the medical records, and my mother had been in the hospital at least 20 times by emergency for horrors. My mother was emaciated. My mother lost 40 pounds because her money was being stolen, so she wasn't being fed. That money was being stripped and stolen. The judges, etc. So the first time she was admitted to the hospital, and again, I didn't realize it at the time, but somehow I was able to get the medical records. And one of the things that was on my mother's medical record was something called altered mental state. I have nothing to do in the medical field. I don't know very much about the I don't know very much about the medical industry, and I didn't realize it until much later. What does altered mental state mean? That means drugging. At the time that my mother was admitted to the hospital, I went to the hospital and I saw the doctor that was administering these drugs to my mother. And when I walked into the room, he actually ran out of the room with the phone in his ear because he was talking to the guardian, and he knew that I was going to demand a drug test be done on my mom, and I was going to demand answers, and he fled from the room. So that's how deep it goes. It's doctors that are doctors not only for people that are older or vulnerable people. These are doctors that are out there with medical licenses purportedly taking care of the public itself. These are doctors, nurses, all kinds of
Mhm.
medical professionals. um, it just goes so deep, and the longer it goes on, the more it's going to expand, because um, it's just become like the new normal. And
Mhm.
so how long are people going to wait? It's not going to get any better. It's never going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. And
Mhm.
I think about how Rome fell because of so much corruption. The weight of the corruption caused Rome to fall. How
Mhm.
long is it going to be before the same thing happens here?
Right, right. Oh, and I was looking up, the murder for hire statute. I found 18 USC section 1958, and it's a
1958, yes, 1958. I said 2258, but it's 1958. Yes, that is
yeah.
correct. Murder for hire.
Yeah, and it said the defendant caused another to travel in interstate commerce intending that a murder be committed in violation of state law, and that the murder was to be committed for hire. That's really weird. That's just really weird.
Yep, yep, yep. You see, when people really start because people get diverted by these illegal void guardian laws in whatever state they're in, when what they really should be doing is looking at is the federal criminal laws, because this is kidnapping, this is murder, this is conspiracy, this is a scheme to defraud. These are
Mhm.
all federal crimes with state counterparts. This is racketeering. And so that's also part of the diabolical, agenda, is to get people, and I see it in our group all the time. The victims in the group are saying, "Oh, I just looked at this state law, regarding guardianship, and they violated this law and they violated that law." When they still, it's very hard to assimilate, especially people like us who are law-abiding citizens. This is like a foreign situation for all of us. So to re-educate ourselves to what's really going on, which are federal crimes and international crimes against humanity. And again, this is the Rome Statute, which is the basis for the International Criminal Court, which sets forth what are the crimes against humanity, one of which is torture, which is happening to our families, and emotional torture is also torture. And so these are all crimes taking place in a civil court. So the other thing that I want to mention, and we, again, it has to be done as a group, but people have to be aware of the fact that the sheriffs in their county are the ones that hold all of the power. And so, I started out this conversation by saying that I went to the sheriff, to expect remedy and got nowhere. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the sheriff is an elected position. Is that correct? I believe
yes.
it's elected position in Florida.
It's here too.
So there you have, good. So there you have the public clout of being able to elect these people into office. And by uniting and having united clout, that is going to also make a difference. But you have to unite. There has to be a huge group of people behind this. And then you go to the sheriff en masse and you demand that they do their job. And their job is to indict and arrest judges and legislators who are engaged in criminal activity. And so this is beyond the word corrupt, because we always wrestle with, what is the word that we use? And a lot of people use the word corrupt. These are crimes. This is so far beyond corruption. There should be a specially designated, crime to describe this, but there's a whole litany of, federal crimes, like I said, but there should be, the real definition is crimes against humanity. That's what the real definition is. And human rights atrocities.
Definitely. Yeah. It's, I was going to say something like, it's just so, it's like depravity, what they're doing to people.
That's right. That's right. That's what it is. It's inhumanity, and it's the people that are doing this. And I don't even want to couch it in terms of medical terms, but they do fall within the definition of psychopaths and sociopaths, because there's no consciousness. But it's really beyond that, because we're talking about so many people that are involved. We're talking about federal and state judges. We're talking about federal and state legislators. We're talking about governors, and it goes up to all throughout the entire federal government. So again, it's just gotten to this point because this right stripping, and people have to be aware of it, right stripping has been allowed to be done by an imposter government who's been installed to protect our rights. So it's all working in reverse. And so, we've talked about a lot of different things, and I just don't want people to get diverted by all of the different scenarios that we've discussed, when it all boils down to, rights stripping of our birthrights, our human rights. These are superior to civil rights and constitutional rights. These are rights that we are born with, and they're inalienable, meaning they can't be stripped, they can't be transferred, they can't be stolen, they can't be encumbered, they can't be taken from us for any reason. And so whatever laws are illegally enacted for that purpose, they're just automatically illegal and void. And that's really kind of what I want to convey, because that's the most important, that's the most important takeaway, I think.
Mhm. Yes, having a group, and with this endguardianracket.com, I think is excellent. I was just looking at it as you were talking too, and I'm glad you put that together. And how long did that take to even put that together? Because there's so much info on it. I mean, it's brilliant.
Well, that's the culmination of, this long, kind of like indentured servitude that I've been in for a very long time. And so, actually it didn't take all that long to put together because, I've been living it for so long. But, the other thing is one of the victims in our group, it's so heartbreaking because oddly enough, there's quite a few people in the group that are in the medical field, nurses, and it's beyond their comprehension how this could be happening. But one of the people in the group who I believe is also in some aspect of the medical field, adopted her daughter. And I almost break down. There's actually two or three people's stories. Well, more than that. I mean, they're all heartbreaking. But she adopted her daughter from another country when the daughter had been abused in one of these third world countries. And I believe this happened, when the little girl was like 1 or 2 years old, and she was able to adopt the daughter and bring her back here. And she became the guardian of the daughter in the state that she lived in. And then I believe, and I'm not percent sure of the details of the story, I believe that when she moved into another state, CPS, which is another criminal racket that gets funded by Title IV, as we talked about, stole her child because they would delay in transferring the guardianship or something inanely illegal anyway. I'm talking about illegal by the government by requiring her to transfer her own natural custody of her child, to be guardian. So her child is being human sex trafficked, being placed around in foster homes. And she has pretty much lost her livelihood because what happens is that you become consumed in trying to do something, to get your family member back, which never happens because when you seek remedy, you never get remedy, as we talked about, just more rights are taken away. And she was just talking about not so much, the what the whole thing is about her daughter, but the fact that she can't go to work, she can't make a living, she's been vilified for their crimes, and just, it doesn't end. All of us are in this for, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 20 years, because once you get in it, you can't get out.
Right.
And then you get into more courts.
Right, because it just sucks you in, and you've got to run the course for almost forever until it's run its course.
Right, but it doesn't ever really run its course, because then whenever you go into another court, you get attacked in the other court, and then you get embroiled in what I call inextricably intertwined rackets. And so it's just, it feeds itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the legal business is a business of crimes, because the more crimes they commit, the more you get to pay to go to another tier of court, and you get to pay more attorneys that are actually behind your back working against you. And so it's the only business that I know of that benefits from being in a crime syndicate, because the more crimes you commit, the more money.
Mm. Are you still there?
I'm still here. Are we still there?
Yeah.
Are we
Yeah.
still on?
I don't know why Zoom did that. It but yeah, we're still recording. We're on.
Well, I guess the only other thing I want to kind of point out, and that wasn't really, my main concern, but that and this absurdity in our government and court system, they have established themselves as they have established a judicial oversight commission, and political and the attorney oversight committee, where they have no authority, but they've only taken the authority because we've allowed them to do that, whereby they police their own crimes when clearly this they have no jurisdiction to do that. Once attorney engages in an illegal activity, and the same with the judge, and these are all proven on their face, it needs to go to an independent agency that's comprised of we the people, a commission of we the people, and law enforcement, monitors, federal monitors for the most part, that are going to administer accountability.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, criminal accountability, because these are beyond, these are not civil violations, these are criminal violations. So that's one of the other things that I'm hoping that whoever's listening to this will give it a little thought, and maybe put together their own committee, and work with us, or work as part of what we're trying to do, because all of these commissions and committees that have been anointed by these criminals, it makes no sense. It just makes no sense, but yet the public buys into it, for reasons that I can't understand.
I think the public just doesn't get it, or they're not even aware of this, or they're living their happy lives until it happens to them.
That's right. No, that's right. But still, it's kind of insulting, when these committees, pretend to somebody that has the slightest bit of sense that there's any legitimacy to these committees. There isn't. But as long as the public is complicit and complacent, this is going to get worse and worse and worse, as we've talked about. There's no end. There is no end to the things that they can come up with, and they work together. They all speak to each other.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a racketeering enterprise. They all get on the phone with each other at 6 a.m. to figure out the activities that they're going to do for that day. And the judges hold their judicial conferences where they conspire, there as to what, practices they're going to put into effect to perpetuate this never-ending, rape of rights,
Right. Mm-hmm.
for whatever is going on. So, again, it just all goes back to the public banding together, and taking this to an international level as well, and trying to get legal enforcement by the sheriffs. And I'm hearing, throughout different pockets, that this may be happening in certain places. I haven't seen it come to fruition, but I do think that because these people are elected officials, there's hope, to go to the sheriffs with a unified group to demand that they do their job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And definitely. And where's your mother now?
My mom passed away.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, my mom passed away.
Hmm. Oh, gee, I'm so sorry. So we've got to just go as a group and talk to these sheriffs and get something. What if they just don't listen? I mean,
Well, that's what we're seeing right now, that they're not listening, but we're not really speaking as a group so much. And so, we just keep trying. We just keep trying, with another thing, another place, we just keep doing, things that we haven't done in the past in the hopes that, maybe this will work and maybe that'll work. And I do believe that, the bigger the voice, the more, the more, um, the bigger the voice, it's inevitable that we're going to get remedy, but there's got to be a huge voice, and the people have to wake up. The people have to wake up. They have to wake up and assert their rights.
mhm. I mean, some people say, there should be like such outrage with this stuff as to the magnitude of George Floyd. And I don't know how you feel about that, but
Oh,
people have said that to me.
oh, of course there should be. Of course there should be. Where is the outrage? Where is the outrage? And again, I think that it's because people, I perhaps think that, their situation is just an isolated incidence of this corruption, but they, this is all over. This is all over. It's even in the mainstream media, but it's
Mhm.
all over the internet. So certainly they should be far beyond that by now.
Right.
And definitely the outrage should be there. Definitely.
Mhm. Well, I hope there is change. The more I keep, having people on like you to spread the word, I just hope it reaches the right, people to come together. You know, um, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm going to actually, I have a couple of inquiries into attorneys that are more familiar with the Title IV family law. And
Mhm.
I'm going to get back to you with a couple of suggestions after I've done a little bit of research into that. And maybe, you might want to interview them and have them talk about the Title IV. And then at some point, maybe have a little bit of a forum, to address kind of the combined um, the combined stripping of the laws that are going on in different courts. And
Mhm.
so is that something that you might want to think about doing?
That would be great. So how can people contact you? I see on this website, the End Guardian Racket, there is a phone number there, so they can call that number.
Yeah, they can call that number 786-696-7816, but I prefer if people communicate through that portal and just give me the information that's requested in the portal, and then I'll be able to get back to everybody. So again,
Mhm.
the information that's requested is just the courts that you've been involved with, the court number, the name of the case, and who in your family is involved in that, and the city and the state. And then, provide me with your contact information and I'll get back to everyone. But you can communicate with me through that portal, guardianracket.com, or again, my email address is barbara.stone.usa@gmail.com.
Definitely. I definitely want to have you back on. Um, because you'd be great to have an update on what you're doing. So I'd like to have you back on. Um,
Great. Thank you. Thank you very
yes.
much.
Okay. Well, Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Mary Ann Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again in the future with Barbara and another exciting episode. And thank you again, Attorney Barbara.
Thank you very much for bringing this depravity to the attention of the public, and hopefully they're going to have a big takeaway as far as how to help get it resolved.
Most definitely. Hey, don't jump off, okay?
Okay.